All right, let's see what this is talking about. It's an application, which is the best part of math, not all the x plus y and all that craziness stuff. Like, where would you actually use this? So it says a person is remodeling the front entrance to his home. And so, hey, remodeling, we want to cut an arc for the top of the entranceway, and we want to make sure it's symmetric. So you definitely don't want me doing it, right? I could do the math, but not the wood part. So the arc needs to be 16 feet wide and 2 feet high. To draw the arc, he will use a stretch string and chalk attached to an end of a compass. I realize people use compasses anymore. What's a compass look like? Y'all remember them in school? They had those little points on them. All right. Okay. So yeah, being a little silly, but trying to just figure this thing out. So the big thing here is you need to know the rules, the properties, all that kind of good stuff of circles. That every point on a circle, you know, if I can do anything, I would just love to be able to draw a straight line, but that's okay. That's pretty good. And so looking at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is that point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -8, which is this point, and then 1, 2, which is this point. So knowing this stuff right here, that the center, okay, so no matter where you are at on this circle, okay, and going to be my circle too, every single radius, this distance should be the same. So what I'm trying to do is figure out my beautiful circle here. I'm trying to figure out where would this center be. It looks like an acorn, but pretend it's a circle. So where is that center? I have no idea, and I don't know how to find it. Well, sure I do, because remember, whatever the radius is, these distances here, get another color going on, these distances here will be the same. So that distance will be the same, that distance, call it distance 2, and so on. Well, what I could do is I could do some math here, and I could find these distances. So let's do that first. I'm gonna get rid of this bad boy because it's just in my way. And let's do some math here. So do you remember the distance formula? Distance formula. See if I can grab it real quick, because, you know, just being too lazy to type it, copy, or write it, type it, copy. Remember, that's the distance formula, okay? And which is the distance even between, the distance between 2 points. So even the whole radius is a distance, right? Okay, so I'm going to find the first distance. I'm going to call distance 1, which is going to be between -8, 0. So -8, 0 and 0, we're going to call it y. So I know that it's on the y-axis, right? Because that's on the y-axis, but I don't know what that value is. That's what I'm trying to find. And so we can call this x1, y1, this x2, y2. And so using my formula here, then I plug in my values. And so I have -8 minus my x2, which is a 0 squared. And then I have 0 minus y squared. And so if I multiply all this stuff out, -8 squared is 64. And -y squared would be plus y squared. Okay, how did that help me? Well, it actually is going to help me, because I don't know how to solve for y, so I probably need to find another distance. So I'm going to use the distance 2, which is now going to be 0, 2. I said and, but it really should be 2, the 0, y. All right, so let's see if I can find distance 2. So distance 2, big O square root is x1, which is 0, minus x2, oh how nice, is 0. And then plus my y1, which is 2, minus my y2, which is y. I don't know why I paused. All right, so of course, this first piece is going to be 0. This you want to be very, very careful that you realize this means 2 minus y times 2 minus y. That's FOIL, right? And so what that's going to end up is what y squared, I'm just going to change the order, of minus 4y plus 4. So hopefully you remember that whole FOIL business there. All right, you're like, okay, so how does that help us? Well, I know that, and I mentioned this when I got rid of that little thing there, that distance 1 has to equal distance 2, which has to equal distance 3. So you might even say, well, why didn't you use that point? You could have. That's just the points that I chose. So what I could actually do now is I could set distance 1. I don't know where I'm going to do this. I'm running out of room. I could set distance 1, which is 64 plus y squared, equal to this y squared minus 4y plus 4. All right, y'all already know this ain't gonna fit, so let me go to another page. All right, so once again, I set distance 1, which is the radius from -8, 0 to the center. That's the radius, right? And then distance 2, which was that 0, 2 point. So this was square root of 64 plus y squared. These have to be equal. Square root of y squared minus 4y plus 4. And this is something that I can solve. I know it might look a little crazy, but ain't no big deal, because if you square, ooh, that's a cool color. If you square both sides, remember what happens, the square root, like magic, vanishes. And so I have y squared minus 4y, that got ugly, plus 4. And what I want to do is I want to solve this for y. Well, it looks like the y squares are going to cancel out. That's beautiful. So that leaves me with 64 equals -4y plus 4. I could subtract 4 on both sides. Whee! And then I get 60 equals -4y. I could divide both sides by -4. And then I either pick up my calculator or I know that that is -15. You're not impressed, I can tell, right? I'm pretty impressed, because that tells me this point right here is 0, -15. So that would be my center, is 0, -15. All right, now it asks what should the radius be? Well, remember both of these are radiuses, so you could use either one of them and just simply plug in 64 plus -15 squared. And if you throw all that in a calculator, you get the square root of 289, which equals 17, which would be the radius. So the radius equals 17, which is that distance, and is that distance, and is that distance, and any point here that you find is that distance. So a lot of these, I mean, I know, once I work it, it might seem a little bit easier. Maybe it may be a big mess, but it's getting the definitions down of what you need to solve these problems first.